Ronda Rousey, she finally peeled back the curtain on her retirement. On an Instagram live stream, Rousey stated, quote, "My concussion history that I had to keep secret for years so I would be able to continue to compete and perform. That's basically why I had to retire," end quote. Rousey is currently promoting her soon-to-be released new book, Our Fight. Guys, does this change anything about how you viewed her exit from MMA all of these years? Mike Bond, we go to you.
Yes and no, I guess. Like, do I feel like this contributed to her getting her head kicked off her shoulders by Holly Holm or brutally knocked out by Amanda Nunes? Not really. I mean, if you look at it in like hindsight, the skill sets, obviously the greatness of Nunes, Holm's kicking ability, like that would have happened if she had an iron chin or if she was more vulnerable to a knockout or a concussion or something than anyone else. So it doesn't really affect that much, right? Like all the fights she won, you aren't pointing to this, right? So that's kind of part of it. But yeah, like her saying this doesn't shock me given the year she had in judo, which I think she kind of alluded to. This is where it really started out, and she kind of had to cover it up during her mixed martial arts career and then in professional wrestling as well. I mean, I know people who have done years of judo as well, and they've had their fair share of concussions. It was a different era too when she was competing in terms of like looking out for athlete safety, the overall kind of scope of head injuries and things like that when it comes to athletes. So I'm sure there was lots of times where she got a concussion in a judo match and they rolled her out there the next day or the next week or whatever, and it just compounded. So yeah, like this probably happens to a lot of people, and it's either under revealed or under discussed or whatever. So this is all real stuff there when it comes to that part of it, but you got to take the good with the bad to come out all these years later. And we'll have to see in the book exactly how much weight she puts on this. If she feels it was the detrimental part that led to these fight outcomes, that's a whole different thing. But it's obviously something that kind of weighed on the back of her mind and is part of it. And why is she revealing this now? You got books to sell, so I get it, but I don't know if it really changes anything. I lived through those moments. I saw the greatness of the Ronda Rousey run. It was an incredible time in the sport. There hasn't been many eras or points in times like what she did during 2013 to 2016 ish. But yeah, I would like to have like an interview with her and actually have her talk about this more elaborately, but she's not interested in doing that kind of stuff, and she's going to give her side of the story in this book, and that'll be what it is, I guess.
Yeah, I want to read the book too and see. I think it's more ego. I mean, I'm sure the concussions had a lot to do with probably losses and how she felt emotionally, but I think a lot of it was ego. What do you think, Dan? Danny?
I don't doubt. I don't think this is BS. I don't doubt that she's had a history with concussions. One, she's fought for a long time, and two, in judo, like those throws, man, you can really land on your head and get messed up. So I believe her when she talks about the concussions and how that led to her retirement. I mean, she had a good amount of money. She was a popular star. You get head kick knocked out, which was a horrible knockout by Holly Holm, and then a year later you return and you get quickly pieced up by Amanda Nunes, and that seems to be sort of somebody that's going to hold the belt for a long time. And right, she did. You might want to stay away from fighting, right, and then maybe go somewhere else. So I get that, but the retirement itself doesn't really change in my mind, because I don't think it was ever about. I don't think fans and sort of the MMA community in general was upset at her because she retired a bit early, because she didn't kind of try to come back and really get her belt and really stick around. I don't think that was the issue. The issue was that when she lost, she turned her back on MMA. She didn't do any interviews with MMA media. She never really talked about MMA, even when she switched over to pro wrestling, just very, very little. And it just seemed like she was ignoring this sport that gave her everything, that gave her so much, gave her fame, popularity, legacy, money. And people were backing her and supporting her and really helped turn her into a star. And then all of a sudden she was ignoring those people that gave so much to her. I feel like that's kind of where the fan backlash came from. Not really because she retired early. So I get the whole concussion thing. It makes sense as why you would want to stay away from MMA. But then she also switched to pro wrestling. And we know those guys and ladies put themselves through the ringer as far as, damage on the body. So To me, I'm with Mike. I don't think it really changes my view on her retirement. I think it was poorly handled, and I think it's more on certain decisions, not really the fact that she retired earlier prematurely. So yeah, it is an interesting wrinkle, and I hope the best for her. But no, it doesn't change my opinion on her retirement.
Good stuff. Yeah, I want to add to it ego and social media. That's the reason. Goes. How about you, man? What do you think?
Well, if anything, I'm glad the decision is final now. Like I understand leaving MMA and I get that, but like Danny said, you don't go to WWE to avoid concussions. Like that's happening all the time over there. So that part I didn't really understand. But what do you do with her? You know, you're not going to call her a coward. You're not going to call her a quitter. If you look at her career as a whole, what she did for women's MMA, what she did for MMA as a whole, then going over to pro wrestling and headlining a WrestleMania, like this is things that these are careers that people dream of having, right? She's always going to be a pioneer of the sport. And I think what she needs to do is stop trying to be Ronda Rousey, the girl that feels like she could have beat anyone, anytime, any place, and just kind of embrace being that pioneer of the sport, right? Almost like Hoist Gracie is to mixed martial arts for us, right? Like we look at Hoist Gracie, nobody ever goes, "Hey, I wonder what happens if Hoist Gracie matched up against George St. Pierre." Like we don't do that because we understand that it was kind of like a different era of the sport, and he was more of a pioneer. She was a little bit of both. She was a badass in the cage, but she was also a pioneer. I would embrace that. Guys like Chuck Liddell, BJ Penn, when they ended their careers, they didn't have the best of endings, right? But when they walk into a room, they command respect because of the things that they accomplished, the things that they did. I think she needs to become one of those people, be one of those people that embraces that part of it. Leave the ego, put that out the door. Just be a pioneer, be happy with where you're at and what you've done for the sport, and leave it at that.
Very well said, Goes. And we don't have to find out what would happen between GSP and Hoist Gracie because Matt Hughes showed us,
Right.
or at least gave us a good idea of how that would go. You know, I think it was Ramona Shelburne. Maybe one of you guys can remember. You guys have better memories than me. She did an interview with her, and I think she also did one where she was like on a panel like The View. And I remember she was saying she didn't lose that night. Like that just goes to show you how what her mind was trying to tell her instead of dealing with the loss. Like McGregor, when he lost to Diaz, he showed up in a suit and said, "That dude got me." He gave him his due, his respect. He dealt with it. And then in a week, he was already running his mouth for Diaz part 2, right? And instead, she was acting like it wasn't a loss. And that's where I knew I was like, that's not going to go right for her. She thought the fans turned her back on her.
With
But
a
guess what?
pillow on her face too.
When she got off the plane, yeah, she took a week to get home from Australia and then covered up, didn't want TMZ anywhere. Why? Because she's used to getting her flowers. You got 1 million fans, and she's got way more than that. But just 1% turn their back on you. That's 10,000 people that you think hate you or don't think you're all that, and she focused on them instead of the 990,000 that beloved her. And that was the problem. Social media and ego, in my opinion, man. She just didn't, and it happened at WWE as well. And here's the weird thing. I know she's talked about being homeless, living in her car, whatever. She's actually pretty smart, man. When you hear her talk about different subjects and why she couldn't get a grasp on dealing with winning and losing, I don't know. It's not like she came over with 2 gold medals like Kayla Harrison. She accepted a lot losing in judo, and then guess what? Turned it around, became world champion.
Well, did she left the sport? You know, she was really disappointed. She talked a lot of crap about the Olympic system and mistreatment there, and you know, she completely left that behind. And I believe she was like doing Coast Guard work and then working as a bartender and stuff like that before she stumbled into MMA when she, you know, kind of got her life back together. So yeah, the struggle was real. I mean, Lazy Bed said it good in the comments. There's a level of denial and brainwashing necessary for combat sports. I think we all would agree with that, but Ronda fully leaned into it. It certainly was disappointing. I mean, the way she went out, she was this female icon, you know, empowerment for this next generation of women, the whole do nothing bitches era of that too, that she kind of made famous. And then when things didn't go her way, it did not, you know, she couldn't handle it, and she kind of ran away with her tail between her legs, and I think that did hurt her legacy a fair bit. The highs were absolutely incredible, but the lows, I think, put a spotlight on the flaws of her as a human, and we all have that. But yeah, it wasn't great, just considering the 2 complete disparities between the heights and the lows.
Yeah, great point. And something I want to expand on, which Go said, I think it was perfectly put. Like, there's other legends like Chuck Liddell, right? They've taken some big L's, like when they were at the top and they were superstars. And it just seems like they're part of the MMA community. They embrace it. They still show up to MMA events, boxing events. They're very much involved. A lot of those legends go on to coaching or etc. But they still feel part of the MMA community. At this point, does anybody feel like Ronda Rousey's part of the MMA community? Like she pretty much just kind of pushed everyone away. And I feel like that rubbed people the wrong way, especially in a sport that's so niche. People get so defensive about their sport, and we see it every time like somebody from the outside tries to go in. It's like, we embraced you, we propped you up, we gave you this, and all of a sudden you're acting like you don't know us. So I think that's what really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And great point by Goes, like mentioning all these other legends that have taken big L's, and look at the way they're perceived nowadays. Like very much different than Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, for sure. Is she even accepted by the wrestling community? Do you guys know? Does anybody follow that?
I'm not a
She's
big
had some
pro
rough
wrestling
outings
guy.
with them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
she said some things that you're not supposed to talk about, and I know a lot of the female wrestlers didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
She did talk crap about WWE on that same interview that she revealed the concussion. So maybe we're kind of seeing a little pattern here.
Yeah, a little bit.